I, for one, thought I was completely fed up with superhero movies. So imagine my surprise when episode 1 of Invincible season 2 comes out, and I'm immediately once again hooked. It's no secret that the superhero genre is one that Hollywood has beaten dead, then alive, then dead again in the past 2 decades. Superheroes have been the flavour of the month for the past 30 or so, in both TV and movie. You have Marvel and DC movies, as well as their cartoon spin-offs like Teen Titans, and then their live-action dramas like Arrow and The Flash. Then you have satires of the genre like The Boys, Kick-Ass, and The Umbrella Academy. Disney Channel also jumped on board the superhero train with Miraculous Ladybug, Mighty Med, and Lab Rats. Even anime seemed to cash in on the trend, all the way from Japan, with One Punch Man and My Hero Academia. So by the time Amazon Prime got around to adapting the comic Invincible for screen in 2021, it seemed like there was no room left for it in the media landscape, even with its star-studded voice cast. And yet somehow, there was. I was going for a superhero-esque with this outfit. It's ended up skewing more steampunk, but that's okay. We also like steampunk. To give a short summary for those who don't know, Invincible is a mature cartoon series that tells the story of Mark Grayson, teenage son of the famous superhero Omni-Man, as he inherits his father's powers and tries to live up to his legacy, only to start questioning if he even knows who his father is at all. That's a sort of non-spoilery version, but we will be touching on some major spoilers later in this video. So if that's not your thing, and if you haven't watched it yet, this is your warning to turn back now. The first comic book issue of Invincible was actually published all the way back in 2003, before the quote-unquote superhero hype even existed, when a lot of aspects of its story were still new ideas. For example, the idea of interweaving family drama with superheroes was something that hadn't really been done yet, other than found family dynamics. Then The Incredibles came along, and suddenly that idea was credited to Pixar. Invincible did a good job of grounding the superhero idea by making it based in the drama of a young adult's life. This story is as much about Mark Grayson's struggle to be a good superhero as it is about his struggle in his personal relationship with his father, or his struggle with maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Both very relatable things for the average person. But the fact that Invincible was the original piece of media to have these ideas doesn't then mean that fans would enjoy it anymore just because it was the first. For example, I'm not a big fan of The Exorcist. I didn't find it very scary when I first watched it, and I think the pacing is way too slow. My dad loves The Exorcist because he can remember how revolutionary it was when the movie first came out. There were no other horror movies like it, and most of the horror movies following it have taken inspiration from it. I grew up watching those copies of The Exorcist that had experimented with the original formula, perfected it thanks to improvements in technology, and made it more palatable for modern audiences. So for me, The Exorcist is just a worse version of those. And it could have been the same with Invincible. There wasn't a lot to draw people to watching the first season of Invincible. It wasn't an IP that many people other than hardcore comic fans had heard of, and on paper its premise was super generic and been done a million times by Hollywood before. In fact, if it weren't for the meme, you know the one, I don't think it would have got an audience even close to the size of the one it did. But like me, a lot of people saw that meme and thought, I'll give the show a go. I'll watch 1 or 2 episodes to see what it's like. And by all accounts, the first episode is pretty by the numbers. We get introduced to a bunch of different heroes, we meet our protagonist Mark, and we get to learn what his aspirations are. But then comes the post-credits scene. We get a preview of what the image from the meme had hinted at. There's more to Omni-Man than meets the eye. And also, this show is not for kids. A cliffhanger/mystery like this is a surefire way to get an audience invested pretty quickly. But what keeps you watching? Obviously the hyper-violence is rare for a cartoon and gets you interested, but only for so long. If you were just after a hyper-violent superhero story, you could watch The Boys or Deadpool. It's the same for so many of the elements in this story. You could find them elsewhere. So what makes Invincible so good that people keep watching and I'm still invested in season 2? Well, unfortunately, there isn't one easy answer. It doesn't employ some secret tactic that no other writers or studio have ever thought of that makes it the most original piece of superhero media ever. It isn't. What I would say makes Invincible so good is good writing. It's a well-crafted story that you can tell took years of thinking about by the creators. Unlike the Marvel or DC cinematic universes that have to put out at least 2 new movies every year, Invincible was able to take the time to have a really tight story over the comic's 15-year production period, and it shows in things as simple as the dialogue. How many times do Marvel or DC characters in the movies start what feels like is going to be a meaningful conversation, only for them to end up quipping their way through it and having no real character development? Compare that with Invincible, where you have spine-chilling lines like,
"You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer."
Or tear-jerking ones like,
"I know you think I can't do this. Hit me and let me prove you wrong. Please, Dad. Please just hit me."
And Marvel and DC are finally starting to see the results of their rapid-paced production, as people get bored of these repetitive stories at long last. In my mind, the thing audiences are getting tired of isn't actually superheroes or superhero movies. Just look at the positive reaction across the Spider-Verse received from audiences just this year. There's so many different directions you can take the concept of superheroes that, as long as you're telling an interesting story, we'll probably be seeing superheroes on the big screen until the sun burns out. What people are actually tired of is the lazy storytelling that Marvel and DC exhibit in their recent works. Okay, but how can they overcome this? Better working conditions for their writers would be a good start. More time to work on scripts, better pay. But you've probably already heard all about the strikes going on with SAG-AFTRA at the moment, so I won't harp on about that too much. What I'm trying to say with this video is that Invincible is a well-told superhero story, one of the best in recent years, and that is because of the craft behind the work. Simple as that. And I'm really glad this show got memed and blew up, because that was all it needed. A chance to show people how good it was.